Anwesha Banerjee, PhD. You're a medical science liaison at Axum Therapeutics. You served on the International Board of Toastmasters as one of their directors. You've been a scientist at Axion Biosciences and also at Emory University School of Medicine. You have a master's degree and a PhD in neuroscience and cognition from the University of Texas in Dallas, and you have a master's degree in biotechnology. You've also spoken at TEDx about stage fright. Your tagline, don't get over it, get used to it. What's going on in our brain about the dealing with presentations that the rest of us just don't understand?
If in my TED talk I've talked about an interesting example that whenever we feel some kind of threat, our body, our brain responds in a certain way. And one such threat, evolutionary wise, the threat was out in the world. But now, as we are in a different time, in a different generation of, we all those outside threats have reduced, but still there are situations that make us feel that we have the same kind of threat. And public speaking tends to be one such threat because you see you have all these eyes on you, people are watching you, people are listening to you, you have the fear of rejection, you have the fear of what they will think about me. All of these together starts playing a role in how your brain responds. And that's where the fear comes from. You see this as a threat. And it takes a while and a lot of practice for your brain to get adjusted to that threat and not to perceive that as a threat anymore.
So, Dr. Banerjee, in your various roles and interests as in medical affairs and as a strategic leader and a communicator and a mental health advocate, how has your experiences and your knowledge of how the brain works changed the way you interact with people that maybe the rest of us don't quite work at that same level?
In my job as well, I do need to talk to a wide variety of healthcare providers who are physicians, who are nurses, and other healthcare professionals. The best way to communicate is to first listen. I think a lot of time the communication gap happens when we have so much to say, we have so much to share that in that process we forget to listen. I think we all talk about know your audience, and that plays a big role in how your brain can modify the way you communicate based on who you are talking to. If I'm talking to a fifth grader, if I'm talking to another neuroscientist, or if I'm talking to another doctor, they all have different languages that they speak. So to be observant and to do your homework and research on what matters to them, what they are trying to achieve, helps your brain gets acclimatized to, okay, what my response is going to be. And that comes with, again, practice. That comes back again and again. Is it doesn't happen in a day, but if you slow down, if your brain thinks that, okay, these are the different group of people you're going to talk to, this is what matters to them, you eventually can train your brain and practice in a way that you can suit the narrative to this different audience. Like I even among doctors, I talk to neurologists, I talk to primary care physicians, I talk to pulmonologists. One is a brain doctor, one is a heart doctor. They are treating the same set of patients, but they look at the patients and treatment, how to treat them in different way. So I have to meet them where they are and then take the conversation from there. So it requires homework, practice, and really knowing your audience. You're training your brain in the process because our brain is very plastic. We can do that.
In my research with talking to various neuroscientists and cognitive psychologists, I've come to the conclusion that too many of us think our brain is a logical decision-making machine when it's in fact a biological decision-making machine. And that biology, the difference between a biological computer and a electronic computer is is significant. What are the things that you've seen that surprise you about how our brain works differently than a computer that we just don't remember or we seem to forget?
The we have intuition, we have emotion, the part of the brain called prefrontal cortex. Although it's a logical processing machine, but we are able to feel things, and something that we call emotional intelligence, that is not part of, it's a balance of head and heart. It's all happening in the brain, but somehow you're able to the brain is able to take a humanistic approach to solving problems, knowing that this is what logic can do, but at the same time the person you're talking to is a human being. They have their own experiences and they have their own perspectives, so our brain is able to absorb that information and use some of the logic, use some of that humanistic approach of experience and lived experience, and combine that to make decision. That just takes us way ahead of a logical or a computer decision making process. It's not just based on algorithm. There is that X factor, that the Z factor of emotions that we are able to invigorate our decision making process, and that makes us human. That's exactly what it makes us human. Think about the situations in life that you may have had to make a decision. Sometimes the logic is saying something, but we say gut feeling, that in my gut I know that this is what I should do. It's actually not coming from the gut, it's still coming from your head, in your brain. So in a nutshell, our ability to not just treat not just hear the words and the hear the words from people in front of us, but use the whole all of our senses, the eyes, the touch, the all the emotions that we are feeling, and use that to make decision make you use that to make a decision, makes us human and makes us a biological decision making uh, machine rather than just logical.
You mentioned the gut feeling that we have. What part of the brain or parts of the brain are involved in giving us that gut feeling that I guess what we call it a system one thinking?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we have a brain region called amygdala. That amygdala is the center of processing emotions, especially fear, right? Let's say you are in a jungle, and you see a lion or a tiger in front of you. Your gut feeling will be like run. That is also probably logical, but your logical brain, if you have, say, a weapon to protect you, your logical brain will say that I have a weapon to protect me, so I'm safe. But your gut feeling, that emotional fear in that amygdala will tell you, no, this is not a good idea, you should run away from here. So having the information in hand and processing it in our brain prefrontal cortex, but on the other hand having emotions that is getting processed in amygdala, that sort of mixes somewhere in the middle and helps you decide what you should do in the situation.
So, as I recall from, I think it was Daniel Kahneman's book about thinking fast and thinking slow, that the amygdala is optimized for making decisions when you do not have perfect amount of data, when you just need a reaction very quickly, and that the system two thinking, which is the logical analytical thinking, uh, is more centered in our prefrontal cortex. But the problem with the system two thinking is because it requires so much data and analysis, it's very slow. So if we have to make a decision fast, we will use our amygdala to make the decision. If we have time and we can analyze information, we can use our prefrontal cortex. The problem seems to be is that very oftentimes we let the amygdala take over things that really should be done in our prefrontal cortex.
100%, 100%. Amygdala, again, it's we say the flight and fright response. What should I do in the moment? It does help with that. And sometimes that's all the time you have to process anything. That's why when we talk about the fear of public speaking or communication, we let the amygdala take over because it tells me that run away from here because you have a threat here, but and you don't have enough time to process. And that's precisely why I reiterate the practice part, because you can make that into a habit where you can slow your brain down in processing these things and doesn't let that affect your performance on stage, because you can put that in the back of the mind. So that comes with training and practice.
One of the strategies I had come up with is trying when you're dealing with, you know, fear of public speaking or glossophobia, was that we change the way we look at the situation. Instead of I'm focusing when I have that fear, I'm focusing on me as the presenter, what is happening to me, what am I risking, as opposed to focusing on the audience. And that switch made me look at it saying, well, the audience is here because they want to learn from me. They want to hear something that I have to say. They want something from me, right? And they want me to be successful, right? So they are my friend. And I need to talk to them to give them what they came for. So I would shift my the way I would be looking at the situation from my perspective to the audience's perspective and saying, I'm here because they want me to be here and they want to listen to me and they want me to be successful. So, was there anything else that you came up with in your study of overcoming the fear of public speaking and dealing with the transition from the fight or flight amygdala centered thinking to the prefrontal cortex? Is there anything else that you had come up with or discovered?
A couple of things. You said some interesting points. One thing that has worked for me is moving away from trying to be perfect and moving towards trying to be authentic and genuine. And it's okay if your speech is not perfect, if the language is not perfect, if the grammar is perfect, but am I able to deliver the message that I'm supposed to? Am I still being me? Am I being genuine? Is this is who I am, off camera, on camera, off stage, on stage? Because once you are comfortable in your own skin and you just start projecting the authentic self, it's way easier for the audience to accept you, to understand your message, and to take a learning from it. I think we oftentimes try to be perfect. We often try to emulate someone we are not, and that audience can sense that. They know that it's not coming from your heart. It's something over rehearsed, over practiced, and it's not a message that's coming directly from you. So my strategy now has for a few years is that it's okay if I don't deliver the perfect speech. It's okay that I don't rehearse and write everything down. I need to speak from my heart. I need to be genuine and authentic. And it's okay if you make a few errors. I guess we need to look past being perfect and look more into being effective and deliver the message that we need to. And that's a heart to heart conversation. You got to connect with the audience. You cannot fake that. So just be yourself.
What's going on in the brain? Why does that matter?
It helps, it gives you familiarity, right? It puts you in a familiar situation. You know yourself, you know how you talk, you know how you behave, so you are comfortable in your skin all the time, again off camera, in your life in general. And if you can train your brain to thinking that no matter who I'm talking to, which stage I'm talking presenting on, I can still be that person and present myself just the way I have been in my daily life, that will trigger your amygdala a lot less, because you won't feel a threat anymore. You won't have to pretend and try to be someone you are not. And it's just like another conversation like you will have with your friends, your family, or any other known person. So a sense of familiarity is what I feel when I'm just being myself rather than trying to be someone else.
Is there something that's going on? Are we triggering when we have overcome with fear or fright or allowing the amygdala to take over? Is there something about the audience's brain that's picking up on this subconsciously that may be eroding our confidence in the presenter or in the material that's being presented by the presenter?
I believe so. I mean, you've heard many speakers and many good and great speakers. And for me, from good to great, what separates the good to great is when I'm able to feel a connection in a way I can visualize the speaker's message. And again, it's very easy to visualize someone's message when you are freely talking about it and presenting in an authentic manner. You draw, it's a blank canvas and you're painting there for your audience, right? So the more visual you make it, the more authentic storyteller you are. The audience is riding the train along with you and able to paint the canvas in the same way, see the painting that you are trying to draw. So making it visual for the audience also helps connect with them better. That's why stories work always better than any other form of speaking to a large crowd. Yeah.
One of the things I had talked about, it seems that we don't seem to have a good memory for numbers or statistics, but we seem to have a really significant, an amazing memory for stories.
Yes.
Is there something about the brain, the structure of the brain, or anything like that that would make that understandable or to support that or to give insight into why that phenomenon occurs?
Well, we have a declarative, there is two types of memory. One is declarative memory and one is non-declarative memory. So declarative memory is more about data and numbers and facts. And then you come to non-declarative memory, which are more feelings and emotions. So when you are forming those memories, you are connecting different parts of the brain. You are using multiple parts of the brain. Say hippocampus is one part of the brain. You used to remember space and context, but amygdala is helping you remember emotions, and prefrontal cortex is sort of processing the numbers and connecting. So whenever these kind of stories are said and visuals are drawn, you are engaging all of these different parts of the brain. They're all firing together, and that calls for a more stronger memory for emotions rather than just associating with a number, which is you're engaging a smaller part of the brain. So it's very complicated. I don't think we have all figured it out, but based on the data that we have seen, that emotions, you're connecting amygdala to hippocampus to prefrontal cortex, and together they're firing, and that makes for a way stronger memory than one part of the brain alone.
That's a great explanation. So the old adage is the neurons that fire together wire together.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so a bit of data, some statistic will maybe fire one set of neurons, but if you can weave into a much bigger story or to give a scenario or to personalize that statistic, you get a lot more neurons firing together because they're involving different regions of the brain. And if you can involve storytelling, you're creating imagery, you're involving the occipital lobe and the prefrontal cortex and the temporal lobes and all those other parts of the brain get activated.
Yes, yes, 100%.
Is there something about we've got two hemispheres in our brain, and there is the structure between the two hemispheres that allow them to communicate called the corpus callosum.
Mhm.
Now, that structure, um, is there something as a presenter that we can do to make certain that we are actually activating both hemispheres? Or is that important that we activate or address both hemispheres of the brain?
I think it does get activated. I think when we speak, we are using all parts of our brain. So it's very hard to say, let's activate this part or let's activate that part. But I don't think it's even neuroscience, but my strategy will always be add visuals. Like when you tell a story, it just again helps connect the dots better. We humans always learn better in a visual. Our visual learning is better than anything else, right? When we see something, that's why the way education has evolved over a period of time. It used to be only textbook, and now it has moved to a lot more videos and visuals that can help you connect. So I think it's hard to just tease apart that how do we activate one hemisphere than the other one. I don't think we control that very in a conscious manner, but in the subconscious brain, when we are excited about telling something, it's when it's again an original story, something that we have experienced in our life, a lot of emotions, a lot of different brain parts come into play, and that together I think makes that's the best way to teach and learn at the same time. The more you engage, the more you are there present, the focus, the visions, it just again wire together.
When we are dealing with medical situations, you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with sometimes some very serious issues. As a medical professional, the way we communicate can help the patient deal with the stress that is being put upon them, to help them understand what's being asked of them, and to help them make better decisions. What strategies have you seen as an expert in dealing with medical affairs and an advocate for health issues? What strategies have you come up with that leverage your neuroscience background?
That's a great question. One, as medical affairs, of course, I don't directly talk to the patients, I talk to more physicians. But and the physicians are treating the patients and they have to have those hard conversations many times. But I think what really matters is to help people understand how any disease or how any situation can impact the quality of life of the patient, can impact the burden that these patients are can have due to the disease. For example, chronic diseases can impact whether you can participate in your relationship with your family, your relationship with your friends, the social life, and all those disease and mental health issues can impact all of that. So in a when we are trying to communicate and educate the audience, it's very important to have that holistic approach, to see that patient not just as somebody suffering from a disease, but it's more like this person is trying to live a better life on a day-to-day manner. So having that holistic approach in your in my communication when I talk to doctors, that how do you treat your patients, what kind of burden they have in their daily life because of this condition, it just, when doctors see a lot of patients, it just becomes, what is the symptom? The questions. This is the questionnaire. What is the symptom? And just take this medicine and go home and hope you feel better, right? But this makes the conversation a little deeper. This makes the conversation like more of a human. Like, tell me, how is this affecting your work? How is this affecting your relationship? So, in a nutshell, when we communicate to the patient in general or in doctors, I think the strategy has to be human yourself and have a more holistic approach to see that individual not just as a function or a manifestation of the symptoms that they're suffering from, but there are so many other aspects to this person's life. So not just another patient, but another human being.
We have a healthcare system in the United States that is really driven on making certain that you can see as many patients as humanly possible to meet your quota or to meet whatever metric that they have to make it so that the billing is accurate and all those other things. And what ends up happening, it seems, is that doctors are spending more and more time doing data entry and managing the workflow and making sure that they can see all the patients that they've been loaded up with, as opposed to spending time with each individual patient. So we've optimized for the practice of medicine at the expense of it seems, the quality of care, individual care that we offer. How do we bridge that gap? What can we do under those circumstances? Because I think if you talk to a doctor, if they had infinite amount of time, they would spend all the time that they could with the patients and none of the time with all the back office stuff, because that's not why they got into medicine, right?
Yes.
But the system seems to force them away from the patient and more towards the systems. What would
You're,
you?
yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know if it's an easy problem to solve, and you're 100% right. It involves a lot of paperwork and a lot of other things that the doctors have to do. My 2 cents, and this we don't know how it works, is making systems more centralized in some way, because we know that in the healthcare, the doctors don't have an easy way to talk to each other, right? A patient oftentimes has to go through shared care, through multiple practices, and these practices don't have an easy centralized way to communicate the information to each other. So when a patient is going to the fourth doctor or fifth doctor for whatever reason, you end up doing a lot of the same things again and again, a lot of repetitive and redundant work, rather than focusing on the patient and the system and their issues to solve. So in the big picture, I think there's a lack of centralized data system which can process this information very easily so that doctors can spend more time understanding patient issues. There's a lot of disconnect. Every insurance functions differently. Every practice, every big hospital system, they function differently. So there's not a lot of communication that's happening between them, and hence you are sometimes doing the same thing again and again. It's like talking to the customer care. Remember, like, you have to call up a customer care, and then they transfer to you another department, and they ask you the same questions again. And then, oh, no, this is not the right department. They transfer you to another department, and they ask you the same question again. And here you are on a call for an entire hour, but you didn't go anywhere because they're collecting the same basic information. It's like, why is it that hard in your head, you will think. So that's the best analogy I can think of, is that that's what happens when there's lack of communication between the different systems.
When we are talking about the first interaction that a patient has with a medical practice, for example, or the healthcare system in general, it's the front desk, right? They come up to the front desk and they have to answer a bunch of questions and things like that. And then it seems quite oftentimes that this is where the tone of the visit gets set. If the front office interaction is smooth and effective and warm, then the patient comes in with that model that I'm being taken care of, that these people are competent, that there's uh, uh, um, uh, something positive that's going to come out from this interaction, as opposed to if it's, if there's some issue, then that's the model that they walk into when they talk to the doctor. Is that an accurate statement? And if it is an accurate statement, what can we do to help make certain that that first interaction sets the tone in a positive way?
I don't know if I can share much because I haven't been on that side of issues, but again, like just in the communication space in general, right? We have been talking about this, is making things a little more human than just numbers and questions. And that gets hard when there is a huge volume that has to be dealt with, right? We, even in a big country, developed country, we still have fewer doctors and fewer healthcare providers per capita, or per 100 patients, just randomly, and that just reduces the time of how the quality of interactions you have. And that goes for any industry, right? uh, in any service industry, when you have lack of number of professionals, it just pushes you consciously or unconsciously into doing things quickly and fast, there, rather than doing things well and just slow down things. So one of the things is we need to increase number of healthcare providers in general, who is not burdened with uh, treating hundreds of patients at a time in a week, uh, and same thing with the front desk too. So the quality of interaction will improve when we allow little more time, which unfortunately, as we see, it's not there. So as person in communication, then we should have to think about training the individuals in certain way where they can be more effective in terms of communicating with the patients in a quick manner. We are in communication industry and they can use training, but I'm not really sure what kind of training they have to go through to serve the patients who come, right, the first time. So maybe help them or empower them with better questions or better set of like interview questions where they can get the most out of the time that they're interacting.
Should we should we try to maybe I'm trying to figure out how we can use technology so that we ask the data heavy kinds of questions, take that offline so that we can allow the healthcare provider to ask the more qualitative, personal, emotional kinds of questions. Have you seen, does that work for one thing? And second, do you see are there any metrics or anything like that that would say, yeah, there is a way that technology can give the doctor and the healthcare provider more quality time with the patient as opposed to data entry?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, that's because the question comes back to, can we come back to a centralized system of data collection for healthcare, right? Where I see say I'm going to a doctor today and I have some issues and they collect the data, that gets resolved. But for a different issue, 6 months later, I'm going to see another doctor. Can that doctor, through the centralized system, already, rather than asking me to recollect every piece of history, like what history you have, they can see the treatment that I have gone through in the past year or 2 years or even 5 years. And that can help them make the better decision rather than depending on the patient's memory to say, did you have a history of this? Did you have did your father or your mother has a history of this and things like that? This won't happen in a day because there has to be a centralized, again, data collection procedure. It'll seem burdensome in the beginning because you have to collect all these, but eventually, once in the system, that will make patient care easy in the long run. When you see a patient and you have their history and suffering for past 10 years in front of you, uh, to understand what is happening now, because most of the diseases are, it's also a function of time. So hopefully more centralized system can be built using technology and more effective data collection that can help like the doctor visualize the patient's journey in their healthcare quickly and take the journey forward and not have to look behind every time on what happened in past 5 years or 10 years time.
When you go to the doctor's office, you have to advocate for yourself or for your loved one, because oftentimes, unfortunately, we are not only taking care of ourselves, we have to take care of, we're the primary health provider for somebody else, a child or an elderly parent or something like that. What do you see that seems to be the best strategy when we have to advocate for ourselves or for someone that we love?
The the quality of life one is having is important to discuss that, right? Like the day to day life of a person, how it's impacting. Again, we have a job, we have a family, we have other hobbies we want to pursue, there are things that we want to do. And when you start collectively seeing all of that, if your health issues are preventing you from doing all of that, that's something that needs to be communicated. It's not, again, it's not binary. No, health issues are not binary, that it's there or it's not there. There's always a gray area on how it's impacting patients' life. So to advocate for yourself and for your loved ones, it's important to reveal that gray area that all these health issues are causing, right? I have, as a young college student, I had back pain. I had injured from sports, and I was given steroids and I was feeling fine. But that has actually not just changed the way I function, but it has also impacted my risk taking in future, right? Do I want to again future engage in another fun sport? Because I'm scared, because I have all these past pain that comes back in my memory, sort of a PTSD in some way. So those are all impacting our lives, and we need to advocate for that this is a real issue. I Especially in mental health, that becomes an even more common scenario. Or you are lazy, you are lethargic, or you don't want to do things, and things like that happens more. So to have more clarity on that, this is not just me being lazy, this is something more that is impacting my day-to-day function and my quality of life. That's the discussion that needs to happen.
Last question for you, and I appreciate you spending so much time with me on this. You served in many different roles in the healthcare world as a scientist, a neuroscientist, a researcher, a medical affairs expert, a strategic leader and communicator, a mental health advocate, and you're also an expert at communication and presentations. This has been a passion of yours that you've gone to the, as, the international director of Toastmasters with. What drives you nuts about dealing with our healthcare system?
What drives me nuts? That's a good question. I think the binary nature of healthcare drives me nuts. That uh, for your treatment to get covered, for patients to have access to treatments, you need to fit in a bucket, right? You need to check few boxes that you got to have this, you got to have this, you got to have this, and then we will cover your treatment. It's not as simple as that, right? You sometimes these kind of diagnostic tests are not, they fail, or there are so many complex variables that it drives me nuts that people get bucketed into those binary requirements for them to get the treatment that they need to have a better quality of life. So I think the system, healthcare system, it's for the humans, but they need to be a little more human in terms of looking at patients too, right? Either they have it or they don't have it is not the right approach. There is a lot of gray area in between. Hopefully, when we start considering that for patients, more patients will get access to better treatment and they can have better life. It improves not just individuals' life, it improves community, it improves the economy. It just have a positive effect on the world in general. So that part drives me nuts. To hopefully it goes away at some point of time. Not easy, uh, but definitely what something striving for.
One more question. What drives you nuts when you listen to a presentation from the medical community or the scientific community?
The use of a lot of jargons. I think that is something I have started appreciating more now that I'm in communication, that who you are talking to, if no matter how complex the ideas that you're sharing, if you're not able to simplify that, and if you're not able to drive that point and message home, then the message is pretty useless. Because communication doesn't happen when you say the right things. The communication happens when the audience understand what you're trying to say. So I think we all, I was same too. I mean, I was taking a lot of pride in the scientific communication and complex things that I was talking about. It humbled me when I was trying to give the same presentation in my Toastmasters club to teachers, to technology people, for to accountants and all of different background. So it made me think that, oh my god, I am not doing a good job. I'm probably driving them nuts by giving such a complex presentation and they're not really getting my message. So it drives me nuts when there is too much jargon and the communication is not happening at a level when the communicator and the listener are not on the same page.
Thank you so much for your time, and I very much appreciate your willingness to explore all these different topics and jump back and forth between the various expertises and passions that you've had over the years. This will be the end of the interview for you. So if you've got to go, then that's perfect. If you want to carry that conversation forward, if you've got a moment to, I'd actually like to ask you about how there's a perception amongst leadership that Toastmasters is beneath them, that there is uh, it is for people that are workers, not for the executive class, right? And there can be some reasons why that would be the case, but from what I've been researching over the last 30 years is that while that they may think that it is less, it is not, it is less than the level that they need to be operating at because, they're not dealing with the same audiences. There's still a great deal of value that they're leaving, on the table by not engaging in at least the Toastmasters kind of approach. Do you find when you're talking to healthcare leaders about Toastmasters that they kind of think less of it? And what's the misconception that they have, or are they right? Is there something about Toastmasters that is lacking when you're talking about specialized situations when you're dealing with thought leaders and executives?
Hmm. I cannot speak for specific like health leaders, but across the board, what I what the trend has become is finding quick solutions because people are busy, and the higher up in the leadership you go, you just want something that you will get an answer to a question and you move on. And Toastmasters often doesn't function that way, right? It requires you to be disciplined, it requires you to be engaged, and it requires one to learn by doing. So one time factor is an issue, but more than that, I think what we don't, what the leaders don't realize is that communication or being an effective communicator or a leader is more of a lifestyle. It's hard to do something for, it's hard to take a 5 day class on something and you say I'm a good leader. I have a certificate that I'm a good leader. You may have the knowledge, but practicing it regularly is something that will keep you sharp, that will keep you on the edge. And higher up leaders, they don't see that. And that's why they don't adapt that as a lifestyle. For me, it's a simple analogy that I have used before, is that you cannot have a healthy, no, you cannot have a good health by having salad for a week and rest 3 weeks you have junk food. It just be making including it in your lifestyle to practice something to stay good at it. You have to include healthy eating habits to have a continued healthy life. A week of salad doesn't guarantee you a lifetime of good health. So leaders don't seem to understand that across different disciplines. They don't understand that I have reached there, but to stay there, I have to still keep challenging myself and practicing. Uh, One thing I think they too often tell themselves that I don't need it. Uh, and that's because they don't seek the feedback from their employees, from their team members that they're working with, that am I being effective? Am I making the right decision? Am I collaborating in the right manner? So once they become self-aware, those who are, they do practice, but those who aren't, we need to bring that mindset into picture, that I need to keep practicing things. I know when I have taken a step back from Toastmasters, how much it has affected my communication. Why would I want to do that? So be in there for the long run, for the long game, because life is a long game, leadership and everything is a long game. It's not just for today, it's for every day.
Thank you. What is a question that I should have asked but didn't? Is there anything that I should have asked, or is there a question that you would like me to ask? So, in other words, this could be something that you can use. Is there something that you would like?
Not really. I think you asked some wonderful questions and you pushed me and made me think in ways I probably don't do that at all. I hope the message that you were trying to get from all of these is something you got from talking to me. Because I'm a lifelong learner. I'm learning something every day, so I don't have answers to all the questions. So it's just my perspective on things. So no, I don't really have a specific question that I would have liked you to ask me because I
Okay.
think you did a great job.
Well, thank you. You have kids?
No.
Okay. At some point in time, uh, you're you're going to be interviewed by a kid. You should be interviewed by a kid. Right? It would be
They are
it,
tough.
I hope you say yes, because I think that the thing is there are a number of people that, especially youth, that would look at you as someone they would like to emulate. And that if they can see you and look at you and see the human side of what somebody would be like that has achieved all the things that you've achieved. I think that that would inspire them.
Hopefully.
So
That's the
that
goal.
I will guarantee you. But again, thank you so much. And if there's anything way I can return the favor, please let me know. You've been spectacular.
No, likewise. It was so much fun talking. And again, let me know how I can help. I'm just trying to do my 2 cents and any way I can help.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I forgot to do that.